So welcome everyone. So this is actually a popular topic that we presented on at the IAP2 conference last year. We're bringing an updated version to you all today in case you are joining for a second time. And there's lots of new learnings that we're including in this. So wonderful. Let's officially kick off. All right. I'm joined today with Rachel Paulsen from Salt Lake City. Rachel, will you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Paulsen from Salt Lake City. I'm a communication specialist here with our citywide communications and engagement team. I've been with the city for a little under 4 years, and we've been partners with Go Vocal for just over a year now, and super excited to share more about our experience with you all today.
Awesome. The first year flew by fast, didn't it?
Sure did.
Um, yeah, and good to meet all of you. I'm Sarah Horton, if I haven't met you yet, with Go Vocal. I've worked in civic and community engagement for the past 8 years, and I lead Go Vocal's North American practice. One of the favorite parts of my job is definitely advising and working closely with cities like Salt Lake City on engagement best practices. So, a bit of a roadmap for our conversation today. Rachel's going to kick us off and share how Salt Lake City went from limited, siloed engagement efforts to a unified citywide approach, how they fixed the organization, in her terms, not mine, and built systems and workflows to support this vision, and how they continuously nurture engagement best practices through multi-department communities of practice. And then from there, I'll be sharing 4 critical lessons, including really actionable tips and tricks on how you can strengthen your internal organization and processes. And we'll save lots of time for questions at the end. We have about 10 to 15 minutes slated for a fireside chat. So please do drop your questions in the Q&A or chat throughout the conversation. And for those of you who are new to Go Vocal or aren't familiar with us, quick intro. We've been leading the community engagement space globally for the past 10 years. We've worked with over 600 governments, including some of the great cities and counties that you see here on the slide, and really working towards moving from fragmented project by project type of engagement to an always on participation system. But before we officially get started, we actually want to know a little bit more about you and hear from you a bit. So, we're going to launch a poll, and we want to know what is your biggest organizational, so internal challenge today to building a culture of engagement? Is it one, the lack of structure, systems, and skills existing? Are you missing leadership buy-in? Are there limited staff and resources, or is it something else? We'll give you about 60 seconds. Awesome. I think we can end the poll. We have a good amount of responses coming in. And I think you guys can see the results. It's actually pretty close or evenly distributed, with lack of structure, systems, and skills being the first one, which I'm excited to hear. Not excited to hear, but happy because that's what a lot of our content is focused on today. Missing leadership buy-in. Some of you are experiencing that. And of course, the ever-present challenge, limited staff and resources, is up there also. Two of you did say other, and I'm curious if you could drop in the chat, or I don't know if you can unmute, share what you mean by other. Maybe it's something that we can all relate to. Awesome. All right. Okay, so let's officially kick off. I'll hand it over to you, Rachel.
Thanks, Sarah. You can go ahead and jump into our first slide. And you all have to bear with me as I ask Sarah to move between slides for me. I'm really excited to share about Salt Lake City's experience and kind of how we came to having an engagement software. But a lot of it started way before even getting our hands on a platform. And it was back in 2023 when the city realized that we were struggling to effectively and meaningfully engage with our residents. So, to try to understand why, we conducted an internal engagement evaluation. We sent out surveys, conducted interviews, hosted in-person meetings, connecting with staff across the city to just better understand their current engagement practices and identifying strengths and weaknesses, clarifying their needs and what we needed to do to move forward. We heard from over 90 individuals across our city, representing 15 of our 18 departments, with over 30 different teams represented. So, from all of this, we got a lot of great feedback from our staff, but some of our key findings really led to actionable items moving forward. Some of those findings included that citywide, we were lacking structure and guidance on engagement best practices. We were siloed in our efforts and had no overarching vision to guide and unite us across our departments. We were duplicating efforts, sending mixed messages to the public, disproportionately engaging our residents, and overall creating a hard experience for our constituents to meaningfully connect with us as a city. This led to a lot of frustration among our constituents, which ultimately perpetuated a lot of the internal frustrations that we were facing. Additionally, we learned that staff really wanted more training and established standards. They wanted that guidance. They wanted opportunities to learn more about what other teams were doing and finding ways to collaborate across departments. Ultimately, our engagement staff were doing a lot of good work and they were putting in a lot of effort, but ultimately requested help in understanding what those best standards and efforts should really look like in Salt Lake City. Overall, we identified that there was a communal desire for change and an energy to make improvements. People were frustrated with the current state of engagement and were eager to receive that support in a more centralized way. So we capitalized on this energy and started to make changes in structure, practice, and our tools to improve our internal alignment across the city, ultimately resulting in better community engagement. So from these findings, we made some pretty clear changes, including expanding our team. So we started as a four-person civic engagement team tucked away in our IT department. And we are now a nine-person team considered citywide communications and engagement, still in the IT department, but we are seen as an internal service team. We focus on centralizing practices for communication, engagement, social media, and language access. With that, we've created four internal communities of practice across these disciplines. We host monthly meetings per group, which are opportunities to train on best practices and share new resources, find opportunities for collaboration, and ultimately connect internally across teams. Um, our team has been focused a lot on standardizing our resources and our processes and expectations. Our team has gathered everything that we could into one centralized internal location via SharePoint. It's an internal web page affectionately known as our comm space that houses essentially our source of truth. For all of our standards and expectations, and institutionalizing what we need to be doing to ensure that we're connecting and communicating with the public in a meaningful way. And ultimately, why we're here today is the most tangible thing that came of this internal evaluation was our decision to procure an engagement software. And we saw this as an opportunity to help us implement our new standards in a digital way. Sarah, you can go to the next slide. So finding our way to our platform, which we have now labeled as Shape SLC, we ultimately started having conversations around an engagement software back in the fall of 2023, but we put our search on hold until after we did that internal evaluation to ensure that we are really aligned on what we needed from a platform. So before we even considered which vendor we wanted to use, we went into an extensive exploration phase to ensure that we knew exactly what we wanted. We formed a committee made up of six different subcommittees, each focused on a specific topic, such as the technical aspects of the platform, the communications and branding around it. What would the public experience be? Our internal experience, thinking about our staff. What is our standard operating procedure? And then we had a steering committee to help us make choices and decisions along the way. So we spent months and months meeting, asking questions, finding answers, and identifying our core needs with this committee. Additionally, from this committee, we also were meeting with cities across this nation that were already using various engagement platforms. We wanted to learn how they procured it, what they were doing with it, and ultimately these lessons learned. We're a big proponent of not reinventing the wheel. We've seen other cities do this successfully, and we wanted to learn from them. Additionally, we also held some public focus groups to better understand the impact of our digital presence and our methods of communication. So from that exploration, we were able to identify our needs, and then we spent a few months workshopping a request for proposal that very clearly outlined what we were looking for in a platform and a partnership with a company. From the responses we got, we were able to score, interview, and demo the whole 9 yards with various companies before our selection committee ultimately decided on Go Vocal. Our committee determined that Go Vocal was the best fit for our requirements as their platform offered extensive capabilities, especially in creating a meaningful public user experience, providing extensive translation and accessibility tools, and offering very powerful data gathering and analysis capabilities. So over the last year on the platform, we have implemented this tool and gained additional internal buy-in in addition to our internal evaluation and this exploration committee. We knew we already had strong support from those groups, but it was mainly from our engagement specialists across the city, and we wanted to get that buy-in beyond this group. So we decided to do an internal roadshow. We met with all the relevant departments and teams, giving a presentation that explained why we were getting a new tool and how it would help them beyond just conducting a survey and doing more meaningful digital engagement. Additionally, we conducted some need assessments and facilitated leadership conversations to secure their buy-in and support and determine best how to personalize our onboarding process for their teams. From there, we were able to create a training process that allowed people to learn not only how to use the platform, but general engagement best practices. We offered those in a group setting as well as on-demand options. And then we followed by a personalized onboarding for that technical piece of the platform in individual teams and give them that hands-on experience to understand the platform. I will mention that along the way, we had to make quite a few adjustments to our training process and even some of our standard operating procedures, our back-end approval process, and how we were incorporating city council decisions in our presentation of the projects on the front end of the platform. I really believe that because we went through our internal evaluation, our extensive exploration, and just this overall collaborative preparation for the platform, we were able to have enough of that internal support that teams were relatively patient and cooperative with us as we had to make these changes. And I really appreciate that teams felt like they could provide feedback and were really a part of our process building and implementation of this platform. You can go to the next slide, Sarah. So we've had this platform for almost a full, or just over a full year, with it being public since June of 2025. We're obviously still working on making improvements and kind of perfecting how we're utilizing it, but overall, we're really proud of what we've already accomplished and are excited about the possibilities to come with this platform. Some of the lasting impacts we've seen from the public's perspective is we've had over 20 projects published on the platform, reaching over 10% of our population, with varying projects that are on the more fun side to maybe some more serious projects. For example, our very first project that went into the platform was asking for community insights to help guide the repainting of a mural on a giant whale statue that we have in a landlocked state. And it's kind of become this community icon and was a really fun way to start getting that buy-in from the community and hearing their insights and implement it in a meaningful way. We've had some other projects in there, such as park design, climate initiatives, transportation development. We'll soon be launching a project around public safety. And then another fun project that we have coming up is getting some community insight on naming some of our city vehicles. So trying to use this as a community, bringing in meaningful insights as well as allowing people to share their voices, whether it's for those fun projects or serious projects. Additionally, we've seen a really positive user experience in the ease of participating in projects and also that quick and easy registration process that people can create their accounts and stay following those projects from beginning to end. We've also been really working on socializing what our different districts are within the city. So we've been able to, in our registration process, embed a map that shows our different districts and allow residents to self-select which district they reside in, which not only helps them understand what's going on in their area, but it also allows us to better analyze data on the back end. We've also been able to use the platform's various engagement methods just beyond surveys. We've really enjoyed the option analysis, ideation, and mapping tools. And most importantly, I think this platform has allowed us to really increase our transparency for the public, showing them what our engagement process is from beginning to end, what the project life cycle is, and also holds us accountable to the public of how we're using the valuable feedback that they're giving us. And then Sarah, if you want to go to the next slide. Some of the internal impacts that we've seen, we've had over 60 staff members onboarded, including some external consultants. And we have plans to continue to onboard. We have seen new ideas arising of how different teams can use this platform, which has been exciting to see. With the projects that we have put into the platform thus far, we've been able to use the robust data analysis tools on the back end, such as the AI tools, to really help paint that clear picture of what the community is telling us and really uncover insights that are often missed. This whole process has allowed us to centralize our standards and processes, such as putting everything into one place, like our internal comms base, creating those trainings and expectations, and having our teams be the kind of governance team of the platform overall. So all this centralizing is taking place while we're able to decentralize the ability and autonomy of teams. We've given all teams access, with each team having a dedicated approver so that they can still independently use the platform, access results, and publish their projects in a timeline that is meaningful to them. Overall, having this platform has allowed us to have a more cohesive brand and purpose, which has created credibility with the public. We have a similar look and feel across all of our projects. And then we've been able to be more intentional with how and when and why we are engaging with the public, and kind of as we're standardizing those processes, being more intentional with our engagement. So overall, the engagement software has not only given us this new tool, but has also provided a perfect way for us to standardize and centralize our best practices and processes, ensuring that Salt Lake City is united in our engagement efforts while still supporting the respective efforts of every team. And we have a lot in the city. And we've really been grateful for the connections that utilizing this platform, whether that's with Go Vocal and the support that we've given with them, but also the connections we've made with other cities across the nation, and being able to connect and share ideas and really optimize the way that we are doing engagement.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Rachel. Super impactful and really actionable tips. I have so many follow-up questions for you, and I know our chat has some questions as well, but we will circle back to that at the end. Um, awesome. So Rachel shared so many interesting strategies that live outside of actual engagement. Our goal here for this second section is to really zoom out a bit and give you all a framework you can work with and share internally and use to get buy-in. So we have four critical lessons that will help you kind of transform how your organization approaches engagement. They're all designed to tackle specific internal friction points and should be applicable to you no matter where you are on your engagement journey. But before we dive in, let's back up a bit to talk about why internal organization is important and why it matters. And maybe this will feel a little familiar, maybe uncomfortably so, to some of you who are in the audience. So, what happens when you don't have an established culture of engagement? Rachel kind of started describing this in her section, but really we see an inconsistent experience. So, you're a resident who might engage with the parks department on a green space project. That might be a great experience. You might get timely updates. You might feel heard. And then maybe 6 weeks later, you have an engagement with the public works department on a street redesign. And they're asking really similar questions, but the website looks different. You're not sure how to follow along. These types of different experiences, radio silence after engagement, really does erode trust with community members. They might start asking themselves, like, what happened with my input? Why did what I shared last month not resonate in this month? Why should I bother? So that's a big one. The second one, if we shift to the internal or staff experience, are the data silos. So maybe your planning team is running a survey on housing needs. Community development is running a separate engagement on neighborhood priorities. Comms might be collecting feedback through social media. All of that feedback is incredibly rich, incredibly valuable, but it is sitting in separate spreadsheets, tools, email inboxes, different voicemails, maybe, and no one has the full picture. And that does result in duplicative work, asking residents the same questions different ways, and ultimately you're blocked from kind of connecting those dots and getting rich insights. Finally, high coordination costs. So, if you don't have a standardized process today, most of your engagement projects are going to feel custom, very much starting from scratch every single time, and feeling like you're having to reinvent the wheel. So, project managers from various departments might be spending hours coordinating, maybe with comms and engagement, but also other stakeholders, tracking down historic data if they're somewhat new to the city. And that can lead to a frustrating internal experience. And we know how real staff burnout, institutional knowledge leaving the organization is such an important thing. So the bottom line here is really that building community trust does start from within the organization. And you can't start to build that if you don't have a foundation internally. All right. So next slide here. So let's dive into the lessons. The first one is around winning leadership buy-in. I think I saw somewhere in the chat about missing middle or maybe waning interest from leadership depending on the season. And this is an important one, right? It's not a one-time thing where you get executive sign off for something and then hope they stay interested. It's really about nurturing this appetite across your engagement, but especially with leaders around engagement and showing what good engagement can actually deliver, right? Like what are the outcomes we're looking at? So there are three components here. The first one that you can do is tie engagement to mandates. So connect engagement directly to what your mayor, city manager, council, what worries them, what keeps them up at night, whether that's legitimacy and trust, resident experience, successful project delivery. If you can show that engagement helps advance those priorities and it's not a blocker to those priorities, it's an easier way to get their attention. Second, formalize your governance. So, Rachel talked about all of the ways in which they created a governance structure that works in their decentralized engagement organization. This is important to create a clear infrastructure within your org, right? So, who backs this at the very top leadership level? Who are your engagement experts or specialists across the various departments? How do you determine an initiative even requires or benefits from public engagement in the first place? And this is where building that cross-department community of practice can be really transformative. And it also signals to leadership that this is not like a side project or initiative, but it's really a core, meaningful, valuable function in your organization. The last point is to keep leadership engaged. So there's always a next priority to move on to, but keeping them actively engaged can involve periodic reports, presenting data that shows impact, tracking resident satisfaction over time, helping them surface public sentiment in real time. And the idea is that when they see this high quality input and diversity of opinions, they can become true believers in this. So this is an example of what our resident satisfaction dashboard looks like. Imagine your city leadership or city manager can log in anytime and see real-time health scores broken down by topics like quality of life, service delivery, governance, and trust. They can see trending topics where satisfaction is high, but maybe even more importantly, where concerns might be bubbling up. With this data, it's really actionable. Maybe a council member can see, transportation is the number one concern in my district. Let's act on that. Or a comms director can see that trust scores are trending upward as you are being more intentional about closing the loop on your projects. Right. So this is how you move from nice to have engagement is, something that we try to do to this is a strategic asset for stronger decision making. Lesson number two is all around investing in the infrastructure that removes the friction from your process, right? So, on average, mid-sized cities, you might have dozens of staff across multiple departments running community engagement. I know Rachel said that they have 60 that are onboarded in the platform. And the idea and kind of like the base state, if there's not a standard process or infrastructure, is that they're all doing it differently. And in order to be able to align them on how good engagement is done, you got to standardize the workflows, right? All the way from intake of a new project through process design, reporting, and then closing the loop with residents after. And it's not about bureaucracy or like, just imposing rules for rules' sake, but really around easing collaboration and ensuring quality, right? You want your residents to have a high quality experience and not report like it's so hard to connect with the city. And when everyone's kind of working from a similar structure and playbook, it really becomes a lot easier to share insights, collaborate, and benefit from each other's work. So this is an example of a standardized workflow that actually 89% of our clients kind of follow this workflow in our system. And the beauty of this, regardless of what it looks like in your organization, is that once you have a defined workflow, you can actually look at that journey and identify what are the friction points. Where are project managers getting stuck? Where do residents get confused? Where is data getting lost or where are folks dropping off? And then you can systematically work to remove or reduce that friction. So good software, good engagement tools, they can kind of act as a Trojan horse here where it helps you define a process and stick to a process that actually works and bring you some efficiencies there. So you can kind of think of a platform or your centralized hub as an operating system for how your engagement or how your organization does engagement. All right. So let's get a little bit more concrete about what collaboration first actually means. So you can imagine that there are many projects or initiatives within your org that touch multiple departments, right? Maybe planning is the lead on a zoning engagement project, but you need input from transportation, you need to get housing involved, legal, comms to craft the public-facing messaging. With the right infrastructure, folks can all work together on one project from the same space. And so that does allow you to very practically route drafts internally for approval or comments before things go public, feedback tools so the team can kind of flag concerns or suggest improvements. And then you can also have an overarching view of all of the different projects that are happening, timelines, and when, so you can have that visibility as a city. And let's talk a little bit about AI. Of course, if we're talking about digital infrastructure, AI is the big buzzword, and everyone's wondering how AI can be used effectively and in a safe way to make engagement easier and more meaningful. And so when we're talking about AI and how we think about it is that we're not replacing human judgment. We really are looking for tools for efficiency and helping US staff do things that were prohibitively time consuming. So, like things that just wouldn't get done in the past. And the first major application of this that I think is interesting for you all is sense making. So, we're talking about automated data analysis and insights generation. So, really practically, imagine that you have a comprehensive plan update. You get 800 comments, 2,500 survey responses. inputs across multiple engagement methods. In the olden times, or maybe current times, someone has to manually type these things in, read through all of this, categorize it, surface themes, write a summary, or maybe you're paying a consultant to do this. And this could take weeks. And, I think folks definitely, as participants, want to understand what's been done with their feedback as soon as possible. So that momentum is important. So it is important for y'all to know that with AI, you can automatically tag and categorize your input, identify key themes, surface sentiment, areas of concern, and disagreement. And then it can also surface insights that might otherwise get buried in the volume. And so you can tie that back to community input. The second major application for AI is what we call form sync, but it's really about blending your in-person engagement with what you're doing online or digitally. So you have to meet people where they are, or you should, whether this is public meetings, street interviews at a farmer's market, setting up comment boards at the library, or handwritten feedback cards at a community center. All of that offline input is incredibly valuable, but it does take time to manually type and get into the system if you can get it into the same system as your digital input. So in our platform, FormSync uses AI to recognize that input automatically, transcribe audio, photo capture of comment boards, and that can all flow into a centralized place, really kind of resulting in genuine, true 360 input. All right, lesson number 3. So this is all around centralizing internal knowledge. Rachel talked about the comms base, so their SharePoint site. We have something in the platform also called the Participation Hub. And I think it's important, like, to ask yourself as you're designing this infrastructure, where do staff go when they need to learn about how to run engagement? Is there a central repository? How do they get this information? Are they Googling best practices, or are they just guessing? And a participation hub can help you kind of solve these through 3 core functions. The first one is a showroom. So we always think it's nice to start with inspiration. Like Rachel said, no need to reinvent the wheel. There's many, many good municipalities that are doing such great work. So it's nice to be able to look up real examples from other cities that can show what good engagement looks like. Providing a shared toolbox. So being able to have a dedicated training library, best practice templates, how-to guides that staff can customize. So they're not starting from scratch. They have kind of that proven guidance and proven templates that work. And then the launch pad. So an element where your staff can initiate projects, right? Like we find in our work that oftentimes project managers or departments don't know if something should just be kind of info out, comms type communication, or whether or not meaningful feedback is important, and if so, what kind. So helping them think through that process with built-in workflows, intake, ways that you can ask and answer key questions before anything launches to the public. And here's an example of what our inspiration hub or showroom looks like concretely. Maybe you have a planning manager that can come into this hub, search for a comprehensive plan, update project, explore how the city of Allen, Texas, or Montgomery County structured their 18 to 24 months of engagement, and use that as a template directly within the platform to build their comp plan project. All right. And lastly, lesson number 4 is about measuring what really matters and being really diligent about what matters and closing the loop, of course, our favorite thing. So this is the difference between real and performative engagement, we like to say. So let's talk a bit about quality over vanity metrics. Many organizations still might be tracking engagement success by clicks or page views or social media impressions. And those numbers do matter, especially if you want broad reach, but those can be at risk of becoming more of a vanity metric if you're not actually measuring what would determine or influence impact. So the goal here is not always maximum participation, but meaningful participation. And 2 metrics that really speak to that are 1, representativeness, and then 2, public sentiment. So for representativeness, you really want to know is the input you're getting actually reflective of your community's demographics? Or are you hearing loudly from one particular age group or neighborhood or perspective? And I think this is really important also to re-engage leadership, right? If council's going to use this input, they want to make sure that decisions and input are perceived as legitimate, represent the folks that they are representing, and that the voices are relevant to the project at hand. The next one is sentiment. So beyond just counting inputs, what are people actually saying? Right? Are concerns trending positive or negative? Is there consensus or are we seeing deep division in the community? It helps you really understand not just how many, but the what and the why and what further engagement could or should look like. And of course, closing the loop with residents, I think a powerful statistic that y'all should be aware of if you work in the engagement space is from the OECD. And their research recently produced that their report on trust in government, the number one factor that drives trust is whether residents feel they have a say in decisions, which I think is pretty powerful, right? It's not whether the government is efficient or whether taxes are low. It's whether people feel their voice matters. And the best way you can do that is, of course, by closing the loop. So to drill a bit into representativeness, your platform should show you in real time how representative the input is. So in this example that you see, this is age group participation compared to your city's actual demographics. You can immediately gather, we're underreaching residents 65 and up. We're getting strong participation from working professionals 25 to 44, but we are missing youth voices. And that's powerful because across multiple demographic categories, you can see where stakeholder gaps are, direct outreach accordingly. And in this case, maybe you need to take engagement materials to a senior center and partner with school districts to reach families. And so the beauty of this is really being able to demonstrate to residents, to leadership, here's what we heard, here's how representative it was, here's the additional outreach we did to close the gaps, and here's what the community is telling us. And that will really help you move from input to impact. So just to wrap it all up, these are the four lessons. We'll share them with you with the recording and the slides as well. But winning leadership buy-in and really keeping it, investing in digital infrastructure that helps you remove that friction and bring that vision to life, centralizing knowledge and inspiration in one central place, and measuring what actually matters and closing the loop. Awesome. All right, let's get into some questions. First, before I go into my questions, Go Vocal team, did we have any Q&A or anything in the chat that we want to ask Rachel first?
It's not necessarily a question, but a great comment. So I'll share it. It's from Nicole S. She says, we have a missing middle issue. Leadership buys in conceptually, but the commitment drops off when the doers perceive it to be too much work. And staying the course is good enough. We do get better every day.
Awesome. Rachel, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, Nicole, I feel that on a personal level. I think that's something that every organization experiences to some extent. And I think a part of it comes from a continuation with that leadership relationship and kind of helping with that enforcement of standards, but then also having those meaningful conversation with the doers, and kind of asking why, like, what are the barriers to making these changes? And also, that's an opportunity to show how those changes can impact. Sarah, like you mentioned, the platform offers a lot of tangible data that can show the impact, but then also going into communities, you can start seeing a difference in the way that they are talking with city staff or the interactions that you're having. And they're feeling more willing to share their experiences or thoughts and feedback as they're seeing the feedback that they are giving taking place in the decisions that we're making as a city. So I think it's a constant uphill battle, but I'm not gonna say like a solve all remedy, but can be helped by having those continual conversations, whether it's with leadership or those actual doers. I've learned, I think this is something that we gained from that internal evaluation we did was those personalized relationship with the doers across the city. So we could have honest conversations of, hey, we noticed that your team isn't following these standards or is having a hard time implementing this. Like, what is keeping you from doing so, and how can we offer that support? And sometimes it's just needed a conversation that they're like, oh, you're right, we do need to implement this, and can make those subtle changes. So it's kind of optimizing that social capital that we've gained by having those conversations over the last few years.
Mm. Quick follow-up for me, Rachel. Do you think that the community of practice, like those monthly sessions, help doers influence each other? So it's not like always coming from the governance folks. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so we started those internal community of practice as I think like for the first year it was mainly our team presenting of, this is the best way to do a survey, this is the best way to write a comms plan, this is, all the best practices. And in the last year, we've transitioned more to we try to have other teams come in and talk about these are the projects that we are doing. And this is kind of the roadblock we're having. And then we have brainstorm sessions among the group to kind of come up with new ideas, kind of collectively commiserate over the barriers, and try to find new solutions. And I think it's created a space that allows for collaboration. And I think in the last few months, we've even seen teams on their own accord get together and plan campaigns around. Um, Keeping leaves out of the streets in the fall, or planning an April Earth Day campaign across multiple departments. So it's kind of fostered that collaboration that we're hoping to see continue increase in across our departments.
I love that. I love that. And I'm sure your dedicated communications and engagement swag also helps get buy-in and influence. I forgot I was drinking out of this today. Love it. Awesome. Okay. If there are no other questions for Rachel, I have plenty. So kind of referring back to those interviews that you did internally with staff, but also externally with residents. What were the things that really stuck with you all? Maybe what were some things that were surprising? And how did the internal and external feedback mirror each other or diverge from each other?
I think one of the key things that we were hearing, and is probably of no surprise, was a lot of just we don't know what's going on, or we don't know what the best standard is, or we don't know what other teams are doing. And that was something that was often reflected among our constituents is, we don't know what the city is planning. We don't know what these different departments are. We don't know what engagement opportunities there are. That was something we heard a lot when we did our focus groups of just we just don't know of the opportunities that exist. So it kind of gave us the opportunity to reflect on how we are communicating both internally and externally, and how we need to be more aligned in order to create cohesion internally. So then we present ourselves as such to the public, which ultimately we're still working on, still trying to get better, but the communities of practice help, and kind of standardizing processes, and helping teams identify their workflows and how it fits into the larger picture of the standards that we're putting into place.
Mhm. Interesting. I also want to ask about your implementation and your rollout across teams because it was really intentional. So you talked about this like multi-year process to even identify what the shortcomings were, identify a platform. We did onboarding and implementation in February, and the public launch was in June or July. And you then went on a tour to bring on different departments that were public facing. And then I think only now you're thinking about doing a big promotion campaign to the public so that they know this is a platform, it's here to stay. So talk to us about the intentionality behind the rollout, and what were some of the things that you found were really helpful in platform adoption and getting it integrated into existing workflows, and what were some challenges, if any?
Yeah, I think going into this process, we're coming at a minor disadvantage because the city had gone through software implementations recently in the prior years, and they weren't as successful. Teams had a really hard time adopting the tool, were very change adverse. felt like they weren't receiving enough communication and training. And that was something that we recognized was a challenge going into this. And so when we were talking to teams about, we have a new tool coming and how exciting, and almost always people were like, but is this going to be like the previous software implementations? And we were very honest about, we recognize that those were difficult experiences in the past. Let's talk about why they were challenging and what we can do differently this time. And ultimately, that came from people wanting more communication and more training, and kind of seeing what the plan is, while also still having our team as a resource even after they had their hands on the tool. So a lot of times we give people this new shiny thing and say, use it, and then we step away. And so we were very intentional with ensuring that teams had the resources they needed, which is why halfway through our implementation process and onboarding, we had to change things because we saw that as teams were learning to use it, that our process wasn't really what we thought it was going to be as it was playing out. And so we had to make some adjustments and modifications, and then uh, do even a few retrainings with teams. But seeing them just be kind of grateful that we were providing the trainings and clear expectations of how we were using these tools. And even now, our team is very hands on as the teams are individually building out their projects and coming to us if they have any questions. Our team offers periodic office hours that people can come to. But I think overall, it's just kind of been like this consistent presence that we've been trying to do. I will credit a lot of our success to change management principles. We worked with our internal change manager to really identify who we need to have those conversations with, what were their needs, and then be providing that throughout this whole process. But I would say I feel like it's required a lot of flexibility on our end. We create these nice large visions and we get really excited. And then as you start to implement them, you see that they may not work as they are. And we've kind of had to let go of some of our initial dreams and then see how, when it's really implemented, how it's actually better than we originally imagined. So it's been a very collaborative process along the way. And I would credit a lot of our success to the participation of our various teams across this whole process.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, it's important to be flexible, especially as you're getting so many different teams using a shared tool. But I'm happy to hear that some of the results have been surprisingly positive. So that's awesome.
Yeah. I will
Um,
also mention, sorry, I thought of one more thing. In
yeah.
our kind of exploration thing, as we were discussing with other cities, and their process of finding success in implementation, was some of the cities had experienced a challenge in implementation when they brought in the platform and they started putting projects in, and then they started onboarding their staff. And so we decided, kind of learning from their experiences, that we wanted to onboard staff and kind of do that more subtle launch of the platform. Like we were putting projects in there, but we were still ensuring that all the teams knew what was going on the back end, which is why we've held off on our more general promotion, which we're now planning for this spring. Now that we have all of our intended staff in the platform, everybody's kind of on the same team on the back end. So now when we're starting to promote this platform, everybody's on board with it, and we're hoping that we'll see a lot more traction within the platform in addition to what we've already seen thus far.
Awesome. I love it. Let's talk a little bit about that traction and some of the results that you've seen so far, either from staff or residents. But you mentioned like a wide range of projects. I love the whale project, and I got to see the whale in person when I was in Salt Lake City. How do you all balance that? How do you think of, which projects to include? And do you see varying levels of participation based on project topic or department behind it?
Yeah, I would say this is even something that we're still working on, is ensuring that we're not going live with too many projects at once. But I think because we've instilled a very intentional process in the creation of a project, so it's less so of a, hey, we have this project and we want to do a survey. Here's the survey. Okay, now let's think about how to promote the survey. We're asking teams to have a very intentional engagement and communication plan before they even start building their project in the platform. And that has kind of allowed us to intentionally slow down our process and kind of shift where our focus is initially to allow so that I feel like less projects are going out all at once without that intentionality. And is kind of we're seeing that staggered approach. I would say right now we're just kind of letting projects as they come up come through the platform. As we see an increase, we may adjust that to ensure that, again, we're not overloading the public with our ask for engagement. We have seen that some topics gain a lot more traction, whether they're kind of more politicized or apolitical. The whale is very apolitical, but we saw a lot of traction because it's just a fun and easy way to engage the public. But we have some other projects that have a lot more connection into communities and a lot stronger of an impact, and that gains a lot of traction as well. And so it's kind of been a balancing act of bringing in the fun while also bringing in those serious and more impactful projects and ensuring that they are reaching their intended audiences. And again, we're kind of making adjustments along the way to ensure that they're finding where they belong.
Hmm, I love that. Um, with that intentionality, you all have designed your system and your projects so that way you're kind of facilitating discovery from residents. So you talked about building in a workflow that allows folks to understand what district they're in and get served or be confronted on the platform with projects that might be relevant to them based on location or topic. Say a little bit more about that and yeah, what the vision is and how you hope that this allows you to build a culture of engagement more broadly.
Yeah, I think something that was happening before we had the platform was departments were sending out engagement opportunities and everything was kind of branded within their respective departments, or it was like, the Department of Public Utilities wants to hear from you about XYZ, or, the Public Lands Department is doing this. And oftentimes, and this is something we heard from our focus groups, the public doesn't know which department is which. Even if you say, oh, this is the Public Works Department, they don't always know what Public Works means. Or this is the Sustainability Department. Oh, that's great. What do you do? And to them, it was more meaningful to just see things branded as a city. So rather than presenting projects in the context of respective departments and teams, we've tried to brand topics, brand projects underneath the city brand in their respective topics, which the tagging ability within the platform has been really helpful for us to not only tag which district it is and that kind of like location aggregation, but also the ability to say, this is the department that's in charge of it, but more importantly, these are the topics associated. So if it's dealing with cyclists and pedestrians, this is a project that you could be interested in. Or if you're more interested in projects that have to do with water conservation, here's those topics. And it allows for that kind of personalized experience for the public to interact with those projects, but it has made it easier as we're marketing these projects to the public and trying to get their interaction and engagement with them, of kind of giving it to them in a way that they understand, which has taken a lot of practice internally as we're putting, technical city language into that plain, simple language, while also showing it that it's not necessarily, yes, it's interesting to know which department is behind it, but more importantly, these are the topics that matter to you as the public. And so that's kind of taken some practice and something that we've really been working on.
Mhm. Yes, you all are leading the way in terms of plain language communications, a whole nother skill set in itself. Awesome. Well, in our final minutes, I would love if you could just leave the audience with a final bit of advice, anything that you'd recommend for folks to kind of start breaking down those barriers across departments or different data silos.
Yeah, I would say a lot of this started with kind of some informal conversations across the city and kind of uh, noting what those common themes were in those informal conversations. And I think that gave us an opportunity to present to our leadership the idea of doing an internal evaluation and saying, hey, we know that we're struggling and we kind of know why we're struggling, but we don't have the evidence to prove and then, to help us make those changes. And that I feel really, really grateful that we had leadership at the time and that are still here that were supportive of us doing this evaluation. And that has resulted in so many changes for us and has been something that we have come back to for the last 3 years now of justifying why we're making all of these changes. It's even kind of been a point of when teams give us pushback, we say, hey, this is something that you told us you wanted. And so here are the changes that we made in respect to that. And it's kind of a reminder of like, oh, yeah, you're right. This is something that we have discussed. And maybe we need to change the approach a little bit, but it is ultimately the changes that we're looking for. And it's been so I would just encourage you as you're hearing these kind of challenges to take note of them and whether it's a formal or informal evaluation, start keeping track of what these conversations are. And I'm a big advocate for really understanding the problem before providing solutions, which is why we took so much time, not only with our evaluation, but also with our exploration before choosing a platform to really understand what we need. And at some points along the process, we had people trying to suggest solutions of, well, we should just do this and get moving. And it was kind of this is a reminder we don't have a deadline of this project because we want to be intentional with it throughout this whole process. And so, yeah, I would guess say ask lots of questions, really understand the problem, and be persistent with it.
Amazing. Such a mic drop moment. Thank you, Rachel, for all of these great insights and that final bit of advice. And thank you to all of you for joining our conversation today live. We'll be sure to follow up with these slides, the recording, and any of the other resources that we discussed. And we'll see you at the next one. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.